Every single day, we all create mountains of trash. But what if I told you that buried deep inside all that garbage is a powerful, untapped resource? Today, we're diving into a groundbreaking technology that's turning our biggest disposal problem into a source of clean, renewable energy. We're talking about a real-life story of turning trash into treasure. It sounds like a simple question, right? But the answer? Well, it's way more complex and honestly, pretty alarming. For most of us, once that garbage truck rounds the corner, it's out of sight, out of mind. But that's really just the start of a much bigger and often really problematic story. And when I say a mountain of waste, I'm not being metaphorical. We're talking about literal mountains. The scale of this problem is just staggering. And it's a mountain that just keeps getting bigger year after year. Okay, to put this into perspective, let's just zoom in on one city, Madrid. In 2023 alone, they collected, get this, 549,000 tons of residual waste. And remember, that's the stuff that's left over after recycling has already happened. Now just try to imagine that number multiplied by every single major city on the planet. So what are we even talking about here? What's in all that trash? Well, a huge chunk of it, about 40%, is organic matter. Food scraps, yard clippings, basically anything that was once alive. And it turns out this organic stuff is both our biggest headache and our biggest opportunity. So what do we usually do with it? Well, traditionally, we've had two pretty terrible options. Option one, a landfill. There, all that organic stuff just sits and rots, releasing methane, a really potent greenhouse gas. Option two, an incinerator. But because organic waste is so wet, it's super inefficient to burn, and we end up just destroying what could be a valuable material. Yeah, neither of those is a great long-term plan. But what if there was a third option, a much, much smarter one? This is where a company called EcoNeward comes into the picture. They're basically challenging that whole broken system, and they've got a completely new vision for what our waste can be. And their whole philosophy is really captured by this idea. They're not just trying to manage a problem better. No, they're aiming for a fundamental change. They're trying to shift our entire perspective on what organic waste even is. And this really gets to the core of their mission. It's not just about, getting rid of trash more efficiently. It's about building a bridge between two worlds that you'd think are totally separate, waste management and renewable energy. It's all about turning a huge liability into a really valuable asset. So the big question is, how do they actually do it? Well, at the very heart of their solution is this proprietary tech they call BioMock. You can think of it as the engine that makes this whole transformation possible. Okay, before we get into the nuts and bolts, let's talk about the science behind it. BioMock uses a process called thermal hydrolysis. The easiest way to picture it, think of a giant industrial-strength pressure cooker, but way more sophisticated. It uses a super precise mix of heat and pressure to just rapidly break down, liquefy, and completely sanitize all that organic gunk, turning it into the perfect raw material for creating energy. So here's how it works, step by step. First, all the incoming waste gets crushed down to a nice, uniform size, kind of like prepping ingredients before you cook. Then, that material is fed into the Biomack unit to undergo that thermal hydrolysis process we just talked about. And finally, a really clever separation system kicks in to pull out any of the inorganic stuff, plastics or whatever, making sure the final product is super pure. And the result of all this? It's incredible. This process manages to recover 95% of the organic waste that would have just been sent straight to a landfill by an incinerator. Let that sink in. 95%. That is a total game changer. You're taking what was a costly waste stream and turning it into this purified, really valuable biomass. But you see, recovering that biomass is really only half the story. The real genius here is what they do with it next. This is where that bridge to the world of renewable energy really gets built. See, instead of having to build a whole new, expensive facility from scratch, they send this sanitized biomass to a place that already exists in pretty much every city, the local wastewater treatment plant. It's such a smart move, creating this incredible synergy by just using the infrastructure that's already there. Okay, so once it gets to the wastewater plant, the biomass gets a final polishing, if you will. It's mixed with treated water to create this fluid, pumpable mixture. Then it goes through a few more cleaning stages to get rid of any last little bits of impurities. We're talking fibers, plastics, glass, you name it. A
A final spin through something called a hydrocyclone gets rid of any sand or grit, ensuring what's left is unbelievably pure.
And what you end up with is this incredibly pure, energy-dense biopulp. We're talking 99% pure organic matter. It's basically the perfect fuel to be injected into an anaerobic digester, which is where tiny microorganisms get to work, converting that pulp into valuable energy.
So, what happens when you feed this superfuel into the digesters that these wastewater plants already have? Well, the results from tests are pretty mind-blowing. It boosted their production of biomethane, which is basically a renewable natural gas, by a staggering 45%, and they say there's still plenty of room to improve on that number.
And get this, the process doesn't just create one valuable product, it creates two. First, you get the biomethane, which is clean, renewable energy. But then, the solid material that's left over, called digestate, happens to be a fantastic, nutrient-rich fertilizer. You can put it right back into the soil. It's a truly circular system where nothing is wasted. All right, so let's just pull back for a second and look at the big picture here. Because this isn't just a cool piece of engineering. It's a solution that has this massive ripple effect of benefits for our cities, for our economy, and for the planet.
This is what you call a true triple impact solution. On the environmental side, you're shrinking landfills, you're slashing greenhouse gas emissions, and you're creating renewable energy. On the social side, you're helping wastewater plants, these crucial city services, become energy self-sufficient. And then there's the economic impact. You're cutting huge disposal costs for cities and actually creating valuable new resources. It's a win-win-win. There's no other way to put it.
When you really think about it, technology like this forces us to completely reframe our entire relationship with waste. For forever, really, we've treated it as an endpoint, the end of the line, something to just get rid of. But what if it's not the end at all? What if all that trash is actually just the beginning, the start of a new, circular, and way more sustainable economy? Now that is a future worth getting excited about.